From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya! Tonight we're talking about the science fiction film Love and Monsters for episode 58. Love and Monsters came out in 2020 and it's readily available on a couple of the streaming services currently, like Netflix. So check it out. In tonight's episode of Space Brains, we will reveal what we thought about the film, the ins and outs of narrative and film language, plus a deep dive into a specific piece of science that the filmmakers are proposing. Love and Monsters was directed by Michael Mathers, and it was written by Brian Duffield and Matthew Robinson, based on a story by Brian Duffield.
So turn back now if you haven't seen the film and go watch it. And tune back because we're going to go through all the spoilers and we wouldn't want you to spoiled.
Don't be
warning.
Warning.
You've been warned.
You have been warned. And you need to be warned because is this film about monsters falling in love, Surrey? Or love in monsters?
In some places you have to pay extra for that.
Oh. But not in this movie.
Not in this movie. This movie is two of my favourite topics, which is love. Well, I couldn't really say love's not necessarily my favourite topic, but it's a good topic. Monsters, I do love monsters.
I do love monsters. And the monsters in this film are those particular ones that we probably all think or dream about or have nightmares about when we're little children, right? Like it's the beast in the garden that's just amplified, massive.
Yeah.
That is 12 stories high. It's that old school sort of
I even
style.
have a story about a monster frog that scared the crap out of me.
Maybe you have to tell us later.
Yes.
So Love and Monsters, the movie, not Surrey's Love of Monsters, is about that a main character called Joel has survived a monster apocalypse. And it's 7 years later. He's a sort of lovable, hapless guy. And he leaves this cozy underground bunker on a quest to reunite with his
girlfriend,
ex-lover, girlfriend, something.
Yes,
one of those things. the way you're questioning that, it's like you've never had an ex. Sorry,
I haven't.
No, you haven't. Okay, well, I don't know if we should go down that path tonight. What was your number one takeaway from Love and Monsters? Sorry,
my number one takeaway from Love and Monsters is it's two things. One. Apparently, it's cool to be an Australian who brews his own beer.
Of course.
What's
not wrong with that?
I do both of those things, so therefore I must clearly be, one, cool, and two, a villain.
Okay.
Shame that.
Yeah.
Now, pure reference to our good friend danewing, who responded to one of my tweets once, so that was kind of cool.
He has responded on Instagram for Space Brains when we've looked at Occupation, of course. So if you haven't checked out Occupation, great Australian sci-fi, we've looked at both Occupation and Occupation Rainfall, and Dan is in those films, and he is in Love and Monsters.
Which was filmed in Australia.
It was, yeah.
Quite well. So
he's a good guy, that guy.
Mark, is this a hope, a warning, or an experiment?
I think this is an obvious hope film, and it's because, to me, the main character goes looking kind of the quest for love in this apocalyptic world, and realistically, all the humans pretty much help on that journey, including the original people in his bunker. They don't really fight him leaving the bunker. Because he's, questing for his ex, his lover.
Well, the nice thing is that they don't want him to leave, but it's genuine love for him, which means they're not trying to hold him back either.
They don't want to hold him back.
But they do want to express to him that they would really prefer it had he stayed.
Yeah, and I think they also want him to stay because they feel that it's he's just going to get killed out there. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, stay, like, you don't go, and likewise along the journey, he meets a couple of other people that they do help him. And again, then to me, the hope comes back in the climax that he's looking for his love. He finds her. She has moved on. And for him, then the answer is, I need to go back to my original bunker family and then also save them, like take them on. Like, let's find a better place.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And I think, again, there's hope in there. And then also the whole premise of the film, why we have an apocalypse for this story, is that there was a meteor coming and humans did the human thing, which was try to blow it out of the sky.
I do love this
radiation.
opening, yes.
Yeah, and we'll get to it in a minute. But that radiation then affected, the animals living on this planet. And of course, that is not very hopeful, like humans annihilating themselves. But then the fact that humans live on, and we see this quite often in apocalypse stories, I think that there can be nasty humans in an apocalypse, but then quite often most humans are trying to survive, and there's hope in that, I think.
I'm going to have to fully agree with you. This is definitely hope. There's no warning here.
No.
There's, I suppose you might sort of say, be careful how many nukes you launch at asteroids. But that goes without saying.
I think it does. So what was your favourite scene, sorry?
My favourite scene, again, there's actually several, but I really...
Just pick one, come on.
I really like the scene where he's hiding from the queen sand gobbler.
Oh, yep.
With Dog. And Dog sees his red dress over in the water, and there's just that, he's been holding the dog's mouth shut, and he says, no, don't do it. There's a nice bit of... It's comedic,
yeah,
but at the same time, a bit stressful. And I watched this with the kids,
yeah,
and they were really picking up. And kids are a great barometer for the effectiveness of a scene, because they were both amused and delighted that they knew that Dog was going to go for this red dress. Because we've got a dog, and we know what dogs are like. Yeah. But at the same time, they're going, no, you stupid dog, don't do it. So I really liked it. Yeah. There are plenty of other scenes I like. I could go on forever, but that one there sort of stands out as being, it's just a nice way of having both tension and drama and a relationship, but also it's a bit humorous, it's a bit lighthearted, and it leads into that defining scene where he blows the sand gobbler up and overcomes a lot of his fear. He becomes the survivor he needs to be.
Yeah,
and that's it's a lovely slow motion moment where he jumps and throws, and then it goes in a full speed.
Well, is that perfect sort of tension in a film? Like, you've got something that is going to give you away, right? Like, so he's there with the dog, and the dog is like, I want that red dress, and we know that because that's reminding him of the owner. And so it's a nice tension building scene, isn't it? That we the audience are watching going, dog, don't bark, and you're right, the kids get that. But it's a clever technique in that. And I think we've seen that scene in so many films, but in this one, what's interesting is they've used a dog to kind of be the revealer, like the giveaway. It could be I've seen a super scary film, and the person's underneath the car and they're like about to sneeze or something.
Right? Sneeze or something drips. It's going to drip in their face,
and is that how long? Or holding their breath.
The good old standing on the hand.
Yeah.
You're hiding under the bridge or something, and the bad guy stands on the hand, and the person's like really holding it back, and then they twist on the hand, and yeah.
So it's been done before, but it's like great that it's a dog, because like we know a dog is probably not going to be as controlled as a human. Maybe. We've got kids, we know what they're like.
Yeah, I know. And dogs are, I think, sort of inherently funny.
Yeah, well, it's funny how he kind of just grabbed the snout of the dog.
Yes. Well, I've done the exact same thing with my dog. And he's sort of been mucking about too much, and you hold his snout shut, and there's a particular look dogs give you when you hold it. They're like, what's going on? What the heck? Yeah, so it's quite good. Do you have any particular scenes you like?
I like the what's the robot called?
Mavis.
I like the Mavis robot.
I would have liked to have mentioned that scene as well.
I just got a bit caught then in the cow as well. But yeah, the Mavis, when he comes across Mavis the robot, you know, and it's a nice setup, isn't it? Because we've had one Mavis early in the bunker, and he says, "Oh, well, I'm here with a Mavis," but she doesn't say much and I'm sure none of them really do. And so then later in the film, when he comes across that Mavis and she's got a little bit of battery, you know, I thought that was really nice, and it was interesting because they're a source of knowledge, and also like a good robot, you know, it's willing to donate its battery to a human, which is what robots would do, right? Like the scientific side of a robot, the whole point is to help the human get their goal achieved, and Mavis does that. So I really liked that sort of scientific element of it as well. But it was kind of like a sneaky way the writers bringing in another character without it being a human character as well.
Yeah, it was able to a temporary add in because we're introduced early on to the first Mavis, and it's something he's wanted to do. As soon as you see the Mavis there, you know he's going to stick around, and then it announced it has 51 minutes of battery left or something else. So you know it's not going to be around for long.
No.
It's going to add its insight.
And he can't take it with it because it's injured and, you know,
And it's a bit of an example. This film, before we started recording this, we're talking about the fact that this film is kind of like a really good example of these sort of hero's journey style movies. It's like Star Wars and The Hobbit and a few of these other ones. And you have to have these little interludes where they meet an advisor who provides insight. And Mavis is one of them here.
Definitely. And so what did you think about the monsters? I mentioned before, like, this is a science part of this. I know later we'll come back to the sciencey stuff for you, but just briefly, I loved these types of monsters. Like, these monsters were cool. They were the monsters that I think, like, most kids... I mean, you said you watched this with your kids. You know, this is kind of the stuff, like, when I was a kid, this was where my imagination went. I think also from, like, you know, so we take an ant and we blow it up. Remember Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and there's the giant ant and they ride it, and then there's the scorpions, the bad one. Like, I remember being a kid thinking, oh, that's scorpion massive. That would be really terrifying. And I'm sure there's, you know, I'm just thinking 8-legged freaks where the spiders are massive, and, you know, there's lots and lots of stories out there. It also feels a bit of a homage, maybe more to those, like, you know, The Blob, you know, science fiction film.
I think it's just called Them.
Them, yeah,
the ants coming in from... Yeah, I think also being the cold-blooded creatures, which immediately puts in insects and, you know, lizards and frogs and toads and scary stuff. And I mentioned I had a story about a frog when I was... I don't know how old I would have been, 9. Let's say 8, 9, somewhere around there. We had a sand pit in the backyard, and I was digging in there with like a weeding implement. Yeah, I was digging in this, and I sort of scratched away a bit of sand, and there was like a weird green black mottled thing exposed, like a little wall or something. Yeah, in the sand, and I went, what the hell is that? And so I sort of poked it just gently to see what it was. Yeah. And it sort of moved and writhed, I just couldn't identify what this was. So there's this weird sort of blobby, like maybe a thing is like a huge slug or something. We started blobbing out of the sand onto, and I was freaking out because I didn't know what this thing was. Like it looked like it just kept coming and coming out of the sand. Yeah. And I backed away and I was like, what the freaking hell? Turned out it was a frog. Yeah. It had been asleep in my sand pit, you know, as they do. They bury down in the wet sand, and I disturbed it, and it sort of extricated itself from there. But there was a good few seconds, which felt like a lot longer, where its shape, couldn't be identified, and it was just sort of oozing and wobbling, and it was a weird color, and it was definitely something alive, but I couldn't identify it. Yeah. And you could imagine if that had just kept coming out as being some sort of weird tentacle or something. Yeah. that was where my imagination was going. Was that I'd come across something. You know, I was going, is it a snake? That's not a snake. Like, it's got smooth skin. So there was this frog, and the scene where the frog comes out of that pond reminded me of that. You just sort of see some eyes, and you kind of go, what has that many eye stalks? You know. Yeah. And in that case, it really was a monster frog with a huge tongue that
Yeah.
smashed its way through fences and stuff, which is quite good. But yeah, the monsters were great.
Yeah, they were. They were cool, I reckon.
Didn't eat as many people as I would have liked, but I don't think it was that kind of monster film.
And it was nice, and we'll get into this with the story structure, but it was kind of cool that we have that, like, diversity of monster that some are... We get a rule, don't we? We get a rule that some are, if you look them in the eye, kind of a bit nice. They're not really trying to cause drama.
They're not monsters.
They're not monsters.
They might still crush you in an instant,
but they're not deliberately a monster.
Not maliciously.
Which also makes sense because, we have dogs that are friendly and then you have dogs that are nasty. So it kind of makes sense that you have... monsters that are kind of monsters, but then also monsters that they're just a big, large animal, right? Like,
yeah, like a big,
necessarily want to just
smiley crab.
Yeah, that's right. So, what about yourself? Science fiction or creatively? What have you been up to, young man?
I've been playing with some of the masking and special effects features of my video editing software.
Okay,
and discovered that I could... have myself appear multiple times in the same film.
Oh, wow. Multiple Surreys.
Yeah, so I've written a short film. It might be 1 to 2 minutes long, nice. Where I'm, multipliciting, berating myself for not doing the work I was supposed to do as a clone.
Yes.
So we'll see how that turns out, but that'll be up on the website when it's available, and we'll probably flog it to death if it seems reasonable.
Multiplicity. Should we do that as a future episode? I think so. You tell me. Let us know on the socials.
Yeah,
that's a good movie, Michael Keaton.
I'm getting a call in now from a listener.
Yeah, that's right.
If only we could get listeners calling in, that'd be pretty cool.
We'd have to be live, sorry. We'd have to be live. Maybe one day on TikTok.
And
live.
How about you? I know that you just came off filming.
Yeah, so I've talked about it the last couple of episodes, I think, but... Harold the Plumber. It's a comedy drama. Had the full 3-day shoot. So I had a day last week and then the full weekend. Yeah, big cast, actually. I never really realised it. I wrote this film, but kind of suddenly realised there was a lot of cast members, being that it was sort of like 11 characters. It adds up definitely when you suddenly realise I've got this and that. But everything went reasonably well. Both... the first day and the second day started a bit funny, as in things just didn't work out according to plan. The first day we had like an equipment issue, and then the second day we had a space booked, and then suddenly there was someone else using that space. So never good on film is to have lots of outside noises, but we all recovered. I knew Saturday, this day 2 was going to be heavy because we had 3 locations and actors trickling in throughout the day, but... Yeah, we did fall behind from the start of the day, so the whole schedule had to kind of go out a bit funny, but we recovered and plodded on in the afternoon and kind of reclaimed. I think we went 20 minutes over time at the end of the day, which I know for a film shoot's not too bad, because I've been on other film shoots that go way over. Not my film shoot, sorry. Of course.
No. That time you're on James Cameron's film.
Yeah, that's James Cameron's set.
It went an extra month. Jeez.
Oh, no. He kept us up till midnight just to get the shot. But yeah, both the cast and the crew worked really well. It was really great having a couple of people in, like I had a couple of people in the props department. They did a great job, and they just brought another element to it from the memory of my previous film. So just having people kind of say, oh, well, how about this and that, and bringing it, and we'll dress the set like this. And yeah, so it's an indie film. Probably will be put together over the next month and have some sort of premiere party. And then again, like the memory, go out into the festival circuit for about 12 months.
And speaking of festivals, our festival, the Spacebrains Sci-Fi Film Festival, yes, 21st of May 2022.
Yeah.
It has a home.
It has a beautiful home.
Where is it, my dear?
It is called Fish Trap Theatre, and that's at the Mandurah Performing Arts Centre. So it's the premier centre in Mandurah. It's a stunning venue, the whole place. It's a really big theatre, the Fish Trap Theatre, and we've locked that venue in now, haven't we?
It's got stadium seating, It's got a digital projector, It's got lots of a big sound system going on there.
It's fully professional.
It's a real theatre experience.
It's a real theatre. So not only will people come to watch good sci-fi, but now we will be watching in this sort of state-of-the-art venue, won't we?
Yes, and there's a bar and sort of
Coffee shop
cafe
sort of
out
thing,
the front there, and it's on the beautiful Mandurah foreshore. Why wouldn't you want to be there?
That's right. Dolphins, the river mouth, the estuary shops, the ocean's not far away. And this is a really beautiful venue. It's something that you and I definitely strive to set out to get, is something like this. And we've managed to come to an agreement with Manpack, the Mandurah Performing Arts Centre. They've come on board to help us, and I'm super excited that it's in this venue.
It's going to be something special, I think.
I think so. And we're planning on doing some workshops, so we'll talk more about that in our future podcast. But if you're somewhere out there in the world, whether it's Los Angeles, whether it's London,
Lithuania,
whether it's Sri Lanka.
If you're in Iran, it is hard because I don't think you can pay the fee. No. Like there's an embargo on that. I only discovered that because an Iranian film community contacted and said, "Hey, can you swing us some free stuff?" And because we can't pay, and so I looked it up and went, "Oh, they can't." And so I've of course said back and said, "Well, how many entrants are you talking about?" And it has to be specifically science fiction, because I was concerned that it had a feeling of a form letter. And I looked up the group, and they sort of had a lot of drama and a lot of other things. So I wanted to make sure that they knew that this was science fiction. Yeah, I don't mind, doing a fee waiver for them, because Iranian filmmakers need to make films too.
Yes.
But we do want science fiction films, because it's a science fiction film festival. And so when I reminded them that and said, "Hey, and how many are you thinking of doing?" Because again, I'd hate to do the waiver and then we get 300. These films, and you're like, okay, well, that's kind of like, a big stack of films to get through. Hopefully they'd be in English, but if you are in Iran, do get in touch if you've got a science fiction film. If you're in Lithuania, I assume. If you're in Italy,
anywhere in the
Australia,
world, Australia, Mandurah,
Tasmania, maybe not.
Maybe Tasmania. I think you got to get a boat there.
Heck, if you're in Antarctica,
go for it.
That'd be
Make
cool.
a film in Antarctica, a sci-fi film.
Do it.
You've got enough time. Got plenty of time. The entry fee is really fair and cheap. It's quite cheap.
Also, it's in Australian dollars, so
it's Australian dollars, so
nice
it's even
and
cheaper, especially at the moment. The Aussie dollar's trading down, but go for it. Make a film. You got a few months to get something in, and we look forward to watching it and hopefully having it on the big screen.
That'd be great.
It would be super. So we should get into breaking down Love and Monsters.
On with the show.
Onwards and upwards.
Brief overview, please.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, directed by Michaels. Brian Duffield wrote it. Matthew Robinson, based on a story by Brian. We have Dylanobrien, lots of Brians here, who plays Joel. We have Jessica Henwick playing Aimee. Michaelrooker playing Clyde. Arian Greenblatt plays Minnow, and good old mate, you're messaging him all the time, sending him all sorts of weird pictures.
Danny Boy,
Danewing, comes on board. This was filmed in Queensland, but it's a complete United States production. Paramount being the company behind that as the key founder. Now, the box office side of this is interesting, for me as a filmmaker.
Please do tell.
The details. It's all in the details. I think Paramount had the plan, apparently, to do a cinema release, but COVID of being on the warpath as it was last year, they did a deliberate small cinema release, which had a pretty good success rate, and then it just went bang straight onto the streaming services. I think it went on to Apple TV or something first up as a paid subscription. You're like paying for the movie, renting it, I suppose. And it was very successful for a couple of weeks on that, and then it was released to the other streamers like Netflix, where we have access to it.
Thank you, Paramount.
Thank you, Paramount. So, yeah, a bit of a different one. I think a film like this probably does suit that kind of pathway. You know, this is a discussion, and it might be a discussion that we end up having at our Spacebrains Festival workshops with filmmakers, but it's definitely one of those things. We're not doing the cinema releases as much anymore. So,
no. Well, I think the cost of running cinemas and the cost of cinema releases is such that usually they're reserved for films that they're expecting right out of the gate to have
huge numbers,
big returns, which usually means
James Cameron film, you know,
which means they've got to have a big name actors in it and or big name director. You know, and I have to tell the truth, James Cameron, you know, film, like the next science fiction film by James Cameron, I'm probably going to go see it.
Yeah.
Because he's got a good track record.
Yeah.
Likewise, who else? I mean, Spielberg's a similar thing. He's not as active anymore, but certainly back during the 90s and things, if it said Spielberg, I'd go, well, it's going to be a film that would, you know, good.
But it isn't. I mean, the reason why we do that. I mean, Hollywood has created this, and Hollywood's not alone. This big Sony did it with CDs and stuff. But it's kind of like almost like you blast the audience by saying, "Come watch this film. It's by this guy or this girl, and it's got this huge actor in it. You know, Tom Cruise, whatever." And it's directed by Steven Spielberg. So we're like just hedging all our bets, and then on top of that, it's going to be in every cinema across the country, all in one go, 10 times a day. And so they're kind of like hedging their bets, right? And it costs them a lot of money. But then if we all do go, oh, Tom Hanks in a Spielberg film, sure, I'm willing to pay $10-20 for that. Or I'm willing to take my wife on a date to that, or my partner, or whatever. And then the guy at work is going, oh, I went and saw that movie and it's really funny, and everyone, or it's really scary or whatever. And we're all like going to it. The return is worth it. But then when you talk about like a smaller film or an independent film, and you go, well, the cost of that, like even take, you know, Occupation, Luke Sparks' film, it's like the cost of getting it into the cinemas and getting the bums on seats to make it worth it is really hard. Like it's very expensive. Yeah. So you've got to then look at, well, what are some other options? And I think, I mean, COVID threw a spanner in so many different industries. Film is no different. And they are then looking at the same time the streamers like Netflix doing so well that it's like, well, okay, we can make our money back. Again, we've talked about this here previously, but Grant Spatore talked about that, didn't he? Like $15 million film. So no way what we're talking about budgets, a decent budget, but nothing like a Spielberg budget,
no.
Right, or James Cameron budget. But they plan to do a cinema release for I Am Robot. And they did the Sundance Festival and I think some other festival, did very well at Sundance. Lots of critics saying this is a great film, this is going to do well. And Netflix, buyers, producers, whatever they are called, have come along and said, well, so how much did you expect to do at the cinemas? Oh, well, $15 million budget. We would want to get our $15 million back. And Netflix has said, sure.
Yep.
We'll take it for 15, but you're not allowed to put it in the cinemas. And the producers are like, you're just going to give us our money for the film. Sure, do it. Sold.
Easy.
Everyone's happy. So I think a film like this probably does sort of fit into something like that, don't you reckon? I Am Robot.
Yeah, it does.
Sorry, I'm not I Am Robot. I Am Mother.
It doesn't really have any big names that they can tout. Like it's not advertised with, you know, directed
Huge
by
name,
or even produced or written by or anything like that sort of thing. It has excellent, you know, production quality and so forth. It's a top-notch film, but with the cost and effort of, you know, distribution,
thousands of cinemas. If
Netflix, Apple TV, Amazon come along and says, Netflix has got what, 100 million, 200 million people subscribed or something, 300 million, it's something ridiculous. Multiply that by everyone paying at least $10 a month. You're looking at multi-billion dollars a month revenue.
Yeah.
If they just sort of say, oh, your $15 million, I don't know what the budget of this one was, probably about 20 million or so, somewhere in that region. Yeah, we'll give you 60 million. That's triple your money.
Yeah.
And 60 million is a drop in the bucket. They only need to get 6 million people watching it in 1 month.
Yeah.
And it's paid back.
It's paid back. Yeah.
And they would have gotten that.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep.
In fact, I've watched it a couple times now.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So yeah, it's an interesting way, and it's definitely probably the future for a lot of, especially films in that middle tier bit, you know? Like the smaller indie films might have a small niche market that are willing to go out and pay for it at the cinema.
Well, and I think also
and then
particularly...
likewise, your Spielberg viewers might pay for it, but then the in-between market, right? The in-between market's the bit that's
particularly here in Australia, in the States, there's a whole lot more cinemas.
That's right.
And this level of film does get some play. But in Australia, here in Mandurah, we have one cinema.
Well, even Perth, so a state of 2 million people, you've got 4 or 5 cinemas.
100,000 people here in Perth, in Mandurah, and we've got one cinema.
Yeah.
There's another one in Rockingham. But then you go up to Perth, and there's only a handful of cinemas up there, which means the bets or the odds on any film doing well enough, it's sort of, we get the big names, we get all of the blockbusters like
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise doing anything.
It's another Tom Cruise movie.
we got all the Harry Potters and the Star Warses and the James Bonds and the, anything that's just, like I said, it's guaranteed to make a return. We get all of that stuff. Yeah. We do get some of the small things here and there because they got to fill the gaps. But for the most part, if it's not from Pixar, Disney, or whoever, then we don't tend to get it much in Australian cinemas.
Yeah,
it's a shame. So let's talk about this plot here.
So you were saying hero's journey.
That's what I think. I was looking at it's just it really fit that. We're saying, like, for example, Star Wars with Luke Skywalker. Yeah. You could almost just overlay these two films.
You could, and you Neo and the Matrix.
Yeah, and you get the same plot points happening at similar times. It's a really nice round of film. It's not full of surprises. So it's not and that's not what the movie's about. Some movies are about, we're going to upend your expectations a bit, or we're going to hold on to this tension point an extra 5 minutes longer than you're expecting.
That's right.
Because we want to make you unsettled.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what this film, I agree with you in that. First of all, say, there's some sort of hero's journey going on here. Joel goes on a journey to find his girlfriend or his ex, thinking that she's going to solve his current problems, but realistically, he already is the person that can solve his problems. He just doesn't know it. It's the same with Neo. It's the same with Luke Skywalker. They already have the answer within themselves. They don't really need to look outside themselves, although they want to.
Joel, failed in this one because Luke gets the Force and Neo is the one. But what does Joel have? Joel has...
Well, Joel does because at the start he's frozen in fear. Whereas then as he goes along, he's like, no, there's no problems. He's over the fear. And he's also let go of Aimee, that then he can actually focus on his own life now. Yeah. So I think so. Neo's the same, right? Like, Neo is told he's the one, and he doesn't really know what that means. And then he's told that he only can be the one if he believes he is the one, and he's not the one. But then that means that and so in knowing that he's not the one, he then becomes the one.
Naturally.
We're not going to go back
to
the Matrix.
Don't we all end up like that?
Yeah, we do. We do, really.
I mean,
that is the hero.
As long as we're not the number two.
I suppose the other thing is, so like you just said, the narrative is nothing to be totally surprised. It's still fun and adventurous. I think what this film worked off was the style, right? Like, the style's cool. The style is sophisticated. I felt comfortable,
fun, amused, satisfied, and interested and entertained by this film. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's what I was aiming for.
Yeah.
It wasn't trying to blow my mind or make me feel unsettled or make me really introspective about my relationships.
Yeah, no.
It was about finding a bit of Joel in us and seeing how
our own inner Joel,
how we can all, enjoy our lives a bit more. I think I
think so. Yeah. So to me, the winning factor of this film is the special effects of the creatures. The style of those monsters is really fun and tongue in cheek, and that combines with also the way that main character is, and the some of the focal points in this film that he focuses on in those little plot points. Like we were saying with the dog holding the dogs, it's like the dog's going to give him away to this weird killer creature. Also even the fact that he's kind of he's he can't survive out there on his own in this really dangerous world, and yet then he's just going to go off and plod through it all on his own. Like, it's a bit kind of cray-cray, but it's a bit tongue-in-cheek in that way. And I really liked that. And the film sets that barrier, or that... Not barrier, sorry, that's not the right word. It sets that tone from the start with this awesome sort of drawings and him telling us of like where the world is. So it's almost done like those... like a storyboard for a film or a graphic novel, you know. So it's done in a very
we're being
way.
introduced to a bit of a plot point or an externalization of Joel, which is his drawing diary.
Drawing ability, yeah.
He draws all of his diary, and that's a clever thing as well, because he could have written his diary,
yes,
but this is a visual medium.
Yeah.
And seeing just writing on a page is kind of boring, but these kind of fun little cartoony things on the page, you can see the pictures. You don't have to be able to read it. It's really good.
But it doesn't, like, that tone at the very start of him giving us the backstory of, you know, humans blowing up the asteroid and the radiation. Like he says, you know, the animals mutated and turned on their owners, and I can't remember. Is it Kevin and the goldfish? Like the goldfish ate Kevin or something?
Yeah, don't be like Kevin.
Like, don't be like Kevin. And then he's also like, and you know, normally when you kill a roach, you just need some force against you need the force to be larger than the roach. And so that started off with a shoe, and then and they're showing us this in a picture, and then it became a shotgun, and then it became a tank. And then, well, sometimes even a tank's not strong enough. Yeah. Especially if you're like Bob, who gets out of a tank, you know? Yeah. And it's like, so the joke is maybe the tank was okay, but humans are a bit stupid, right? So that tongue-in-cheek of it is quite cool. So we get this story that this whole fallout of this asteroid and blowing it up, causing cold-blooded animals to mutate into large monsters, and that they kind of... The army and the monsters took each other out, and 95% of humanity was wiped out.
That sounds like a lot, but it still leaves us with, if we're talking about an $8 billion
people,
8 billion people on the planet, 5% is what is that? That's still quite a bit. 8 billion would be 10% would be like 800 million, 80 million. Would be 1% times 5.
So this is the thing, right? I never
400 million, still 400 million, 500,000, you know, 500 million people or something. Yeah. Like it's
I never thought this as a kid. I don't know. Did you ever have this thought with the apocalypse films? Like, you kind of thought like everyone is wiped out, but there is so many of us. We're kind of like cockroaches. If it was something like this, or
it is pretty much the case.
Like, I thought about this. I think where I had this realization was maybe Independence Day. And then wiping everything out, and then then me thinking, yeah, like it would be like it's like they've come to planet Earth. It would be really hard to get rid of the human race.
You could get rid of a lot easily.
You could do 95%.
And it's like rabbits.
Yeah.
Here in Australia, we have a problem with rabbits. Introduced species, big problem, and you see the sort of plague proportions. Easy to get rid of. You know, you can literally put down fences and round them up, and then put them in trucks and drive them away. Yeah. But you always end up with some population that just stays there. You can't get rid of it. 2 of them disappear down a hole somewhere. You miss them, and then 6 months later you've got a new population.
Yes, and you know that movie Signs kind of played off the idea of like the alien coming to the farmhouse, and we should do Signs one day on Spacebrains. But it's like, so like aliens are on every house as like a soldier or whatever to annihilate that house, and it's like. So yeah, you could do a system like that, but the chances are someone's going to fail on that system along the way, right? Like
there's too many opportunities of failure,
and even just hiding. So like you said, down the hole. So it is a bit of an aha. So from there we go. So there's a little divergent. 7 years later, Joel is living in one of the many bunkers. He's in number 7045. Sorry,
naturally,
and underground called colonies, where all the survivors have kind of gone. In his bunker, they're all kind of partnered up, romantically, that is, and except for him.
Except for Joel. He's got a cow, a broken robot, and a ham radio.
Karen and Ray, his little kind of roommates, are in the honeymoon phase, so they're kind of making love off camera in very close quarters, and he's
constantly
sleeping.
And without concern for him.
Closing the door meant like a curtain. Right?
Yes, they got a curtain.
But they just left it open. You've left your door open. We know. We know. So Joel is only one because he loves Aimee, his ex. Oh, he's got. As I shouldn't say ex, really, should I? Because he doesn't think of her as an ex.
No, well, they never broke up, and we do get a flashback.
We do,
but
we'll come to that in a moment.
And yeah, Joel is there, and he's explaining. He's cooking the minestrone. He's looking after the cow who really he likes him, and he sort of lies about getting good at target practice.
So I was just going to say. So remember, we talk about is that the 6 things that could that need fixing. 6 things that need fixing for our main character. So he's on his own.
Oh dear.
He can't shoot a target to save his life. He literally can't. He actually goes, "Oh, I'm good at target practice," and he can't. He's kind of talking to a dead robot and a cow.
He wants to meet a robot, but he can't because he reckons they're all gone.
Yeah. And then he freezes in situations.
Yes.
No matter how he's about to die and he's going to freeze.
And so he doesn't have he feels he doesn't have the respect of his co-colony.
So he doesn't have the respect of his people, yeah.
And one more thing is...
And he's just a cook, right?
He doesn't have
a
seemingly valuable position.
Yeah, so that's probably the 6.
There you go.
So when a giant ant... So he's got to fix those things. Does he fix those things by the end of the story? When a giant ant breaches the colony and it kills one of the key men in the group, Connor, I did think, hey, Joel, now it's time to move.
Too soon, Joel.
Too soon. Killing Connor, Joel just survives as another one saves him. So he froze under there. And there's a great line there because he kind of is like, did I shoot it? No. What do you think?
What do you think? Yeah.
So then he decides he's going to set off on a quest to reunite with Aimee so he doesn't end up alone.
Yeah.
Let me just say a little film thing there. What's really cool is the ant. It's a giant ant monster thing. You kind of don't see it. It's all a shadow. It's a creature. It's very alien-like, isn't it? That, as in Alien, what we talked about, that they never really showed Alien, but it was there in the shadow, and there's this big thing kind of looming over him, but you're not getting the camera shot of it.
No, and you can also see that you can't assume that it's just a big ant because we do see its head and face, which is all freaky.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder, well, what else is wrong? And you don't know because you don't see it.
So that's kind of really cool. I just wanted to say it's a really cool thing. So he's going to set off to get to Aimee. Everyone tells him not to do it. In fact, there's kind of a moment there saying, Are you really going to do it? They really came across like parents, didn't they? He's actually going to go through with it.
Yeah, and it was a moment of him sitting there going, yeah, no. And he goes, no, I'm doing it. He packs his bags. Yeah. He starts going out. Everyone rallies around to try and ask him to not go. And again, they're doing this in a loving way, which was nice because they weren't trying to imprison him there or hold him back, but they were expressing, we think you're going to die if you go there, so we don't want you to die. But he says, no, I have to go. So they give him a map, which is of questionable value initially. And finally, he goes and heads out.
He does.
Everyone says goodbye. And he goes out into the Queensland outback, which is beautiful. So if you're not from Australia, or even if you haven't seen Queensland, check out the scenery there. That's up there, Queensland near Rockhampton and that sort of area. Yeah,
it's lovely.
It's quite beautiful.
It is. But it looks very alien to most people.
Yeah, it does. It's like I looked at it when I first saw it. It came out. I thought, that's. I know they've got eucalyptus trees in California. They sort of got a bit of an experiment out of control. But I remember watching it, going, that just must be like California. Or maybe, it's sort of swampy in places. Maybe it's near Florida or something along those lines. But then a couple scenes in, as he's traveling along, there's one shot where I can see a particular plant, and I go, nope, that is Australia. You don't get that plant in that context anywhere else in the world. I don't know the name of the plant. I just recognise it by sight.
So we do have a flashback. Aimee and him having a moment, and he's drawing her, and she gives him those coloured pencils that he has kind of using now. And just when they're kind of, about to get a bit amorous, this sort of like large creature is blowing up a town, their town, you presume, and the army are blowing it up too. So they kind of rush off to that. He also does explain in this moment, then in the present, that he's been drawing the monsters into the book, like to the audience.
And that picture he drew of her harkens back to Napoleon Dynamite, because it's a goofy, it's a poor picture. But the pictures he's drawing now of the monsters are actually really quite good. They're very stylized. Yeah. They're shaded and colored. It's very good.
And then, with the flashback, he's also having the evacuation of Fairfield, and it's he's leaving. He wants to get out, and Aimee says to him, "Come find me.
Come find me."
And his parents are saying, "Go get your parents. Get out of here." But she asked him to come find him. So I suppose it's funny, isn't it? Like looking back on that, when I looked at this sort of a second time, maybe it's on Aimee. She should have just said, "No, see you later, Joel. It's the end of the world. Don't come find me."
I think at the time she did want him to come on.
I think she
and then Mum hands him the chandelier.
She does,
which even my kids laughed at because they're going, "What is he going to do with this? Why does she care about the chandelier?"
But the chandelier is weird, isn't it?
It's one of those things. It's sort of this panicky moment. Someone hands you something, and you just hold on to it.
Yeah.
And we see it. It's hanging above his bed in the bunker. But
we do.
Yeah, I could well imagine doing something crazy like that. You just go, "We've got to get out of here," and you just sort of grab the nearest thing, the slow cooker, hand it over, take this, let's go.
You might need this.
And you're like, "What the hell am I going to do with a slow cooker?" I'm crying out loud. Yeah.
I suppose the problem is you never know what the end of the world's going to really be like, do you?
Yes. Yeah, well, you never know. And Joel is heading out on the end of the earth, and he heads on down into a little town where he sort of goes past some monster eggs, and he's looking around, saying he hasn't been killed yet.
Useless.
He checks the map, and it's just like,
don't go here, don't go
don't go here, don't go. It's kind of like almost like a kid's map, Yeah. So he puts that back away, but we get this nice scene where there's a bloop, 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 and up pop these eyes out of this pond, and then a big frog comes out, and he gets attacked by this gigantic frog, spits a tongue out at him, and
captures him,
and
dragging him towards them,
dragging him in, and just as we think there's no hope for him,
Joel.
in comes running a dog, a kelpie, sorry. Which was another hint. We went, this is definitely Australia. They got a trained kelpie.
They got red dog.
Yeah, red dog. And kelpie bites the tongue, and the frog lets go, and they run off. And dog has a bus that he goes onto, and Joel jumps on the bus, and the dog closes the door because it's a clever dog.
Yeah.
And we have a little interlude here after Joel's first monster encounter, where he performed similarly to what he did in the bunker.
Yeah.
It was maybe he did a little bit better in that he didn't freeze for too long, but he still had to get rescued.
Yeah.
And so we can see that, even though he's taken this brave step of going out, he has not yet become the hero he needs to be.
No. And the dog is called Bark, and he kind of learns this from him, and he's very obsessed over this red dress.
Boy. Dog's name's Boy.
Boy.
Yes.
Yeah, Boy. Sorry, Boy. Not Bark.
Because that is what he does.
That's what he does. Yeah, Boy. And it's interesting because he's kind of like attracted to the red colour, and he's got a red dress, and it seems like the van he's in, he was there with an owner, but she's no longer there.
Yeah. We don't know what happened to her, but you got to assume that nothing good happened.
And then anyway, so Joel sets off on his journey, and Boy wants to come along with him, follow along with him with his red dress.
With his red dress.
And then we learn pretty quick, which is nice, because Joel's just kind of a little bit stupid or doesn't know much about it. Like the dog warns him about things like dangerous
berries. Yeah, don't eat these berries. So he writes in his book, Boy says no.
Boy says no. Yeah. Anyway, and Joel's kind of wandering along from this experience with Boy, and he suddenly falls into a hole, and there's these worm monsters called sand gobblers. And they're kind of coming out of the, like those, what are those old, like,
Like a whack-a-mole or something?
Yeah, whack-a-mole, or even like those things out of cans, the whole thing, you open a can and this kind of thing comes flying out of a can, but obviously a bit more dangerous. And when it looks all doom and gloom, suddenly he's helped out by a couple of people from up top, and they're Clyde and Minow. They rescue him, basically. They pull him up just as he's about to get bitten by one of those sand gobblers, and I think Clyde cuts it in half or something
with
like
a
that.
samurai sword. Because everyone in every apocalypse film has to have a samurai sword.
Someone has to have it. Clyde is no, he doesn't have to be distanced from it because he's from The Walking Dead many, many moons ago.
Merle.
Different type of character because here he's playing quite a helpful fella.
Yeah.
They are heading north into the mountains where there's a village being set up, or there's one set up. There's a lot less monsters due to the colder weather and higher up the mountain.
It makes
sense.
Like that.
Yeah. And they're heading up that way, and Joel could come with them. So Joel kind of says, well, I'm going this way to find Aimee. And they go, well, we could. I think Joel says, I can kind of come with you, but it's a good thing, isn't it?
It's the other way around. So Clyde says, we could go west. We don't have to turn north just yet.
Yeah.
So they head a little bit west.
Yeah. And
he learns a lot here. They're walking along, and he's like, if you get poisoned, eat this stuff.
Yeah.
And the minnow's listing off all the different names of monsters because something's chasing him, got his scent.
That's right.
And so it could be a bone crusher or a bone snapper or a leg breaker or a limb chewer and she's just rattling off every monster that seems to just be about destroying people.
There's a great scene, isn't there? Like they're on sort of like the top of the hill looking down on a devastated old country town, and again it's very evident if you're Australian that we're in Australia, but I can understand also that's very foreign to most of the world. But good old Clyde's kind of looking, and Minow starts teaching him a bit about target practice and stuff, but you can kind of see that in the distance, like trees are toppling over. Yeah. And so something is migrating towards them, and this is what he's talking about, that this thing's got your scent.
Big monster thing, and Minnow is like saying, yeah, my dad was a great archer. He taught me everything I knew. And Joel says, well, why doesn't he teach me then? And so I'm not her father.
Yeah.
Which reminded me of the Peter Sellers joke in The Pink Panther, where for those of you who have not seen the film, Inspector Clouseau comes into a hotel and there's a dog sitting in the foyer, and he says to the owner, "Oh, does your dog bite?" And he says, "Does your dog bite?" And the owner says, "No." So he reaches down to pat the dog and gets bitten. Yeah. And Jasmine says, "You said your dog does not bite." That is not my dog. It amuses me.
It is.
I think maybe because it was one of my dad's favourite jokes. I mean, it still is. He's still around. It sounded like I was talking past tense about him.
He did.
I'm sure he's got other favourite jokes is what I'm getting at now.
So unlike Minow, you still have your father.
Yes.
But Clyde is not Minow's father. They have this story of Clyde has lost his kids, I think, and Minow has lost her father. Something like that. But they're together. So they're together now, helping each other. She teaches him how to practice target, and he kind of gets a bit better. They're teaching him about the ways of the world, but they get to that pointy end where, well, we're going to go north or to the mountains. You're going to go west. You could come, or you could stay. Yeah,
and this is the classic. He's got to choose the next act, basically. So the Act 3 is coming up, and he's got the option here to have a different story. Or continue on his own adventure. And interestingly enough, I think it could have worked either way, but that's, as I was saying at the start, this isn't the sort of movie that is going to turn you on your expectations. Because had he gone, you know what, I am going to the mountains.
But the thing is, if he'd chosen that is the safer option. And it's not his quest, right?
Yes,
his quest
in theory,
was to get to Aimee.
But you could still have quite a movie about that.
Could.
Like
you could still have a
he
story.
could still then, for example, have to rescue Clyde and Minnow. They could get in trouble, and then he's got to rescue them and save the town up in the mountains. You could have had that, but that really would have thrown you off course.
Yeah.
Because you would be thinking, no, he's going for Aimee. He's going for Aimee. And
he's got to... No, but the thing is, he's got to prove that he can kind of like get to Aimee, save Aimee, right?
And that's why the expectation would be that he does go to Aimee, and that is what the movie delivers, which is nice.
They've just trained him up on the ways of the world. That's all.
Yeah, they're the Obi-Wan Kenobis in this story.
They are, and that's great. But that's what I mean. If he goes with them, he's kind of then under the protection of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he's it's not it's too safe again. He's got to go off on his own.
Maybe Clyde should have turned around and says, "You can strike me down, but I will only be more powerful than you could ever imagine."
Whereas Boy is kind of like R2-D2.
Yes,
you know, like he's not really going to save him. He might even get him in trouble, but he's there to help him, you know. But they're sort of going on a journey together. Yeah.
So yeah, he parts ways with them and goes off into the wilderness, which is where he comes across that duck paddle boat.
Yeah, it's nice.
So this is
cool
like
visual
the
stimulus.
first test of his new skills and bravery.
Again. Paperbark trees.
Paperbark trees.
I'm not sure actually if paperbark trees elsewhere in the world, but those ones are very the Australian swamp paperbark tree.
they do like the bit of the wet ground.
Yeah, they do.
And yeah, and I really like this scene because he comes up, Boy runs and hides under this paddle duck.
Yeah.
And the duck is a little bit ominous.
Yes.
Because it's like, the camera pays a bit of attention to it, and it's creepy because it's kind of cutesy, but it's in this swampy, maybe it used to be an old camp sort of site with rentals. But yeah, there's a noise and Joel stops there and he looks up at this weird duck and you're expecting the duck to do something, but it doesn't. No. Instead, little feet or whatever stick up out of the ground around him and shiver. And this, I don't know, wood louse centipede thing curls over him, and there's a bit of a fight, and he freezes.
Yeah, it was a perfect opportunity, right?
Dog saves him a little bit there, and so he gets knocked aside, and that's where he remembers his parents getting squished by the bug.
He does. And
he just stood there frozen, and he overcomes his freeze and shoots at this monster, and they manage to kill it? Yes, so, he shoots it in the head or something.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, it does, because it does. Piles in front of him.
Yeah, piles up in front of him. So that was like his first test. Okay, yep, now we can see he has grown and he has become but he's still got a ways to go before he meets Aimee. And he continues on and is quickly confronted then by the Queen Sand Gobbler. So it happened on this one, or is this after Mavis?
No, that's after Mavis.
So he meets Mavis here. Yeah. He has this nighttime thing with Mavis. And he gets some battery power and contacts Aimee. Aimee says something along the lines of, "Oh, something's changed. There's people here," and it cuts out. Yeah. And there's just a couple of minutes left of Mavis.
Something as a nice little touch is like those jellyfish in the sky.
Yeah, which again gives you that sense that not all the monsters are bad guys.
No, that's right.
Like some are just kind of harmless things that happen.
Yeah.
And Mavis sent, and I love this little homage to 2001 with the Stand By Me, but it's Stand By Me, not
Stand By Me,
I'm Going Crazy.
Yeah.
Sort of dwindling off and then it just cuts out.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in the next scene as well, after the Sand Gobbler, it's Stand By Me with the leeches.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's the two moments. That's what I thought. It's like you got the Stand By Me song, and then you've got the Stand By Me leeches story.
Yeah.
To me, it was like a direct, because the way he even does it, like he comes out of the water, but we're jumping ahead a little bit. So he has this major moment, doesn't he, where he's attacked by this Queen Sand Gobbler. It's quite scary. It's quite aggressive. It's popping out of things.
And this one, he acts the whole time. He doesn't freeze at all.
No.
So he runs from it because obviously that's what you got to do. It's crazy not to.
Yeah.
And he hides and holds the dog's snout. Yeah. But then dog sort of just can't help himself, goes and grabs a red dress. And so he jumps up and goes, "Oh my God, okay, fine." And he takes action immediately.
Yes.
And pulls the grenade out and he starts counting and he drops it on the ground and, bit of comedy there, and throws it in, and we get the leap away as the explosion, leaping away from explosion. He has become the hero he needs to be.
Yeah.
Which means he's got one last test the test of the ultimate. He's got to face Darth Vader one time to become a Jedi.
But that's still to come. So he swims across this pond. He's covered in these leeches, like Stand By Me. It's an identical kind of scene. And instead of it being successful, he then, like, I guess because this world, monsters, he totally hallucinates and passes out.
He gets poisoned. He manages to eat a bit of that fern that he was told. You got to eat this thing. He does, which is nice. And he passes out, and he wakes up and he sees Aimee.
He sees Aimee,
and he gives her a big old pash, and then he falls unconscious.
Yeah. To
then wake up in a bed in a colony.
Yeah, with elderly
bunker.
People.
Elderly people and
no Aimee.
Yeah, well, I mean,
who did I just pash?
Yeah, Aimee comes in, helps him, and says, "Oh, yeah, you were hallucinating pretty badly out there, dude. But we had a moment. No, that was
weird.
Keith or whatever his name was. As an Australian actor as well.
Yeah, from Ace Ventura.
He's also in Mad Max.
Yes, Mad Max. But I remember Ace Ventura.
Oh, okay. I remember Mad Max, but to each their own.
Yes.
And, so here he is. He finds himself in Aimee's colony. There's all old people. He's noticing that this, Aimee is being kept very busy looking after all
the old
people in this colony, which seems to be like an old resort or something. And
she confesses that, they're really glad to see him and stuff, but she's become a completely different person in the 7 years.
Yes.
I mean,
lost
you can totally
someone.
change yourself in 7 years, I can imagine.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. And she lost someone last year. So, she's not too hot on jumping into a relationship. But, you know what? She comes and introduces him that there's the ship. And he sees the ship and introduces him to...
good old Dan.
Oh, well, the other two first. And he's, is that a... And he's kind of relaxed by this because these two are not romantic rivals of his. One's got an arm cannon. He says, I made it myself. And then out comes Dan, Australian accent, cutting through everyone else. He goes, hi, mate, how you going? From the Royal Australian Navy. Retired, of course. And everyone keeps telling him, he brews his own beer. So why'd you leave your colony? You steal food. Everyone keeps accusing him of being a food thief. Yeah. The irony being, of course, then that's exactly what Dan Ewing's character is.
Yeah.
The ship captain. And they reveal they're going to have this journey. They're going to take them away. They can make it on the ocean, which I don't know. That boat is not big enough for them, but maybe the plan is there are other boats. And Joel says, "No, you can do it on land. You can make land." He says, in one of those moments where it sounds like he's being really nice, but you can tell that he's kind of trying to undermine Joel. He says, "Well, yeah, sure, I'm all for it, mate. You got a plan? I'll back you." And Joel goes, no, I don't have a plan. Yeah. Oh, sorry, mate. I didn't want to put you on the spot there like that. But, till then, we can go out on the border.
We can go on my plan.
Yeah. It's just kind of a, it's a bit of an underhanded tactic of cutting him down a bit. And so they're going to have a party. And, of course, again, it's revealed that, come out and cook the barbecue, look like a barbecue guy. He says, no, I've got to use the radio. So he goes back and talks to his people and says, I made it, and they're so happy. But they reveal at his own colony that they've had another couple of breaches and everything's kind of fallen to shit. Yeah. And, they sound a bit rattled and they miss him. Yeah. And he misses them and he pulls out his map and he sees the other side of it. And it's got all their little well-wishing messages. We love you. Remember family, that all accounts, and all these sorts of things. And he goes, oh, yeah, I should go back. I've got no place here. Yeah. I should go back there. Much better place. And in walks one of the oldies, drops down a bowl of berries and a beer. He says, that's Captain Bruce's own beer. He gets reminded of that. It's strange that that's sort of like a cool thing. I guess maybe in the apocalypse it is. Yeah. Nowadays, it's kind of a nerdy thing to do these days, but in the apocalypse, I guess it's probably kind of cool.
I think so.
I might have a place in the apocalypse then.
You would. That's your job.
Yes, great. And he's left there with the berries and the beer, and he picks up the berry, and in case we hadn't figured it out yet, he flips through his book and compares it to the berries that Boy says no, but I don't know. That sort of felt like I was being hit over the head with a bit, but maybe he was still wondering if he hallucinated or not.
Well, it's just to really confirm that the berries are bad.
And so he runs out there to go, hey, Aimee, we can't do this. And everyone's like super drunk. But you got to wonder how they could have gotten so drunk because they weren't when he left. And yeah, they start falling over left and right. And Aimee is like cuckoo bananas. Yeah. And then Captain just knocks him out. Bonk. Where he wakes up.
Yeah, they all wake up on the beach tied up. And now good old Dan, Cap, is not happy chap growing, he's a killer on the barbecue, mate.
Oh, yeah, mate.
And there's the beer. No, it's a plan. They're going to steal all their supplies. And he reveals that their yacht is towed by a huge crab monster that
10 tons of sheer fury.
he controls with an electrified chain. And he's going to set the crab on to feed on the colonists, which he does, as they're stealing their supplies. So this crab comes in, freaking angry, isn't it?
Yeah, and Joel says, I can just whip my way free. And Aimee, of course, has already broken her bonds because we do have to remember Joel has gained a bit of bravery and knowledge, but he's still a bit of a milquetoast, yeah. I think the term is. And she busts him free and, okay. But then she turns around and says, I guess I can take care of these three. How she says it, the way she says it's really cool because it gives you the sort of thing that, I'll take care of these three, and you sort of think, he's been, taken care of, like he was back at his old colony. And he says, after all, it's not like I could cross 7 days on the surface. Yeah. And that's when he goes, and the crab comes over to him, and she kind of indicates the crab and runs off, and you go, okay. No, she wasn't, she was actually giving him the harder job because clearly he could handle it. Mm. And again, this is where you see it is his test. Yes. This is the final boss. And he goes, okay, I guess I've got to do something, as opposed to what he would have done previously, which is just freak out. Yeah. And he goes, he grabs the skewer off the rotisserie, and the crab charges him, and he lodges it in its shell and flips it over him, and it goes on its back, which gives him a bit of a reprieve. Yeah. And then Aimee's fighting with Bomb Girl who shoots the radar, and then there's
it's a big action
bit of a fight scene here anyway, and it ends up then that Aimee knocks out the dude with a gun, and then the rock grenade launcher person shoots at Joel but gets her arm knocked aside and hits the crab, stunning it a bit out of action.
And Joel has then the opportunity to kill the crab. But he realizes, looking into its eyes, that it's actually one of these monsters that's not
bad,
naturally hostile.
Yeah, it's just being electrocuted constantly.
Yeah. And so he shoots the electrified chain, freeing the crab. And there's that moment that you're like, well, the crab could now just wipe you all out.
Could still do it.
And it doesn't. It leaves Joel unharmed and instead heads to kill Cap and their crew, which have kind of escaped just willingly back to the boat.
They're on the ship, and Captain says, I guess we're all going to die now. Yeah. Which is a nice, calm way of just sort of saying it. I thought it was kind of just that realization there's no panic, and he said, we're all going to die now.
I also like how that whole thing was kind of shot, because you had Joel, we all knew, they're in a lot of trouble, but it's then just shot more from a bit of a distance that this crab goes up and you see the whole yacht roll over and start sinking. And
it was, you're not left to any doubt whether they get eaten. They just chucked in the crab's mouth.
Yeah. Joel recommends Aimee and her colony head north, and they do share a romantic goodbye kiss. And then this is where Aimee promises that she will find him one day.
Yes.
But he's not as interested in that.
No.
He's off to
he's got important
head back
things.
To his now his mission now is well, I know now I'm the one.
Yes.
I can go back and get to my actual family, the colony, and take them to safety.
Yeah, he can now rescue his colony.
Yeah. And so he gets there, and their colony their bunker has been kind of annihilated a few times.
And we do see them in a different light, because at the start we saw the colony, they were all brave, there's a breach, and they're all gearing up, and it's all planned and efficient. And when Joel comes in, they're all kind of looking a little bit
like they're all cowering together,
scared, and they see him, they go, oh,
Joel,
they're going, oh, thank goodness you're here, you type of thing, as opposed to, oh my God, I can't believe you survived. It's good. And so then he gives a message out over the radio.
He does.
To all the other colonies. He leaves a recording going and inspires them to come out of their little bunkers out into the world. But it's not a very inspiring speech where he says...
No, it's not an Independence Day speech.
If you don't die, then you probably learn well enough to make it. You think that's great wisdom there.
You might make it to the mountains. My suggestion is you should. But look, if you don't really think you're going to, maybe you shouldn't, okay?
Yeah.
It's up to you. I went on my quest. You need to do your quest.
If you don't die, then I guess you made it. Good on you.
And people hear this and you see some of the colonies kind of departing and heading north. And then it cuts to Clyde and Manow, who are at the top of the mountains, and they debate whether he's going to make it or not. And
I reckon the snow spiders will get him.
Yeah. So they kind of give us that, and that is the end.
The end. Lovely.
Yeah, it's a great little movie. So let us know what you thought about the narrative and whether it does fit the hero's journey. So, do you agree with our analogy there? It's a fun, kind of snappy, tongue-in-cheek, very sophisticated looking film, this Monsters in Love. So I enjoyed it. I think you should sit back with a bag of popcorn and have a lot of fun with it.
It's good. My kids loved it too. My wife liked it.
PG, but I think it's kind of... I mean, when I did sit down to watch it, I did think, oh, is this going to be a bit too kiddie? But it's not, hey. It's adult enough.
I think it's because it has that slightly tongue-in-cheek approach that the less serious adult content, which would normally be considered childish, it played into the theme well. Yeah. So you didn't feel as if, you watched the Harry Potter, particularly Harry Potter, the first one.
The
Harry Potter film, the very first one. It is clearly a kid's film. As an adult, if you enjoyed the books, you could enjoy it. But, the adults in that first Harry Potter film were dumb.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything. And it was like these 11-year-old kids solving puzzles. It makes no sense when you're watching it as an adult. You're kind of going, I don't think so. So it's not like that with this film. This film, it does feel sort of appropriately toned and themed the whole way through.
And I guess where they get away with it, the violence is it's violence against monsters. CGI built up monsters, so you can rip a head off a monster and it's fine.
And we don't.
It's very different.
We see a shadow of a person dying, but
we don't see his rest. So, what about on your ladder? So, for me, each episode we do a ladder that we kind of rank where the film for this week's episode goes in, and the suggestion of the ladder is really like a viewing one. So, if you started at the top or you started at the bottom, and you built your way on each rung of that ladder, you would have a pretty good taste of science fiction. So for me, Love and Monsters comes in at number 27 on my ladder, and that means it comes in after Spectral. Sorry.
Yep. Spectral.
And comes in before Tau. So that's where I'm putting it on mine. And the reason for that is I think... So it's about halfway through the ladder, really, essential. But I think it'd be quite cool if you saw something like Spectral, which is quite, action-packed... invasion sort of idea, and then you come into Love and Monsters, a bit more tongue-in-cheek but still very apocalyptic, and then you kind of then go down the mystery line of Tau with the AI kind of intelligence. I think this one kind of fits in quite nice between those two.
I pop mine in closer down to Replicas, Darkest Dawn and Gora.
Okay.
If you remember Gora, is that quite outrageous Turkish comedy?
Yes.
And it comes down out of that into Replicas. So it's a stepping stone. It had a feeling in some ways of Darkest Dawn, which if you remember was a very YouTube sort of inspired style.
Yeah.
Which again, like the Love and Monsters had the voiceover and had the sketches and things, which sort of had a high school sort of feeling to it as well. I think it fits quite nicely in there.
Sounds good. Okay, so let us know what you thought. If you're keeping up with our ladder, if you're watching either one of our ladders, so Surrey's and mine do deviate a little bit from each other. But yeah, let us know about your own ladder as well. Hit us up online and on the socials and let us know what your ladder is like. So, Surrey, what science part of Love and Monsters do you want to dissect?
Oddly enough, well, we've already spoken about like mutations and giant monsters and things. But something we haven't gone over yet, which is the thing that I quite like, is a very realistic scenario here, which is not gigantic monsters.
Gigantic monsters, yes.
Asteroids coming to destroy the Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that is a genuine apocalypse scenario.
Yeah, we keep hearing about this.
It's of concern by scientists because it's essentially, it's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah.
When will the next event occur, the extinction event occur from an asteroid crashing into the Earth?
Yep.
There's plenty of them out there. They're quite big. We've had some swing by. There was that Umau. That wasn't terribly close to Earth, but it was big enough that if it did swing past Earth, it would have smashed us. You can forget about 95% of the human population going. It would have been more like 99%. Be crazy, if not 100%, because you get a big enough asteroid hitting the Earth and you will literally just scorch the Earth clear of all life.
Maybe that's how the alien invasion would work, is send an asteroid our way.
Well, that's Starship Troopers, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're chucking asteroids at us.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, it's not just science fiction films where they worry about these sorts of things, but rather NASA and governments have said, like the European Space Agency and NASA have joined together and they said, well, what can we do? Like, seriously, what are the options?
Yeah.
And we've had a look at some of the options, and the option that first comes to everyone's mind is chuck nukes at it.
Yep.
And that's because in our mind, nuclear weapons are very powerful.
Yep.
And they are.
Yes.
They suffer from a couple of problems. One is they're not as powerful as you'd think in terms of destroying massive rocks. Because the sort of rocks we're worried about here are hundreds of meters to kilometer sort of size.
Yes.
Or a couple of kilometers. Like a 15-kilometer chunk of rock will destroy all life on Earth.
Yep.
We might have enough nukes to just sort of do something to that. But one of the problems is commonly it is easy to forget about the laws of physics. And so the laws of physics come into play here a couple of ways. One, nukes aren't as powerful as they seem when they're in space. And that's because when you detonate a nuke above, say, a city, what you get is you get an instantaneous creation of an enormous ball of super hot material.
Yep.
And that heats up all the atmosphere, and you get this incredible shockwave and a blast of emitted photons. And this shockwave is burning air, ionizing air, flashing out for hundreds of meters or even kilometers, killing and smashing stuff down. In space, you don't have any air. So when you get an explosion, there's nothing to carry or transmit that force over distance. The only force that you're going to get from that explosion is from the material that itself is exploding. And there's not much of that. Like, if you get a nuclear bomb, it might be the size of a small car. Yeah. And that's the only material that's carrying force. Now you've got an electromagnetic pulse, you've got a whole bunch of photons, which carry heat, but you don't have that blasting effect that you do in an atmosphere.
Yeah.
So if you launch nukes at an asteroid, you have to hit very close to try and evaporate or transmit that force into the rock itself. So that's quite difficult to do.
Yep.
But the other problem is, and this is where the other parts of physics come in, if you have some colossal, 100 million tons of rock hurtling towards Earth at 24,000 kilometers a second, which is not an unreasonable speed for it to be traveling at, you need a huge amount of force just to crack that up.
Yeah.
But if you were to do it like in Armageddon, and you drill it in there and you boom, you still have 100 million tons traveling at 24,000 kilometers a second.
Right.
You've just got it broken into two pieces, but the distances it's traveling, it's quite likely that the gravity of itself will keep it together in a lump and it will still hit the Earth.
Yeah.
And when that much force, you forget about the mass.
Yeah.
You're just talking about, mass, the energy, which is the mass times the speed. And whether that's one piece or 50 pieces or 1,000 pieces, if that all hits, you still get a massive injection of energy into our atmosphere, which sets it on fire and destroys us all. It's much like, you could get shot by a pistol or a shotgun.
Yeah.
The shotgun's lots of little pellets, but you're still probably going to have your guts destroyed.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do it. So that's the other problem with just trying to send a nuke up there. You're just not going to be able to disintegrate it enough that it won't just still annihilate us. So what they really want to do, and the best bet that they've come up with, is a slight deviation. Yeah. So if you can detect it far enough out, you only have to do a small change in its velocity over the time. So they're saying, give us 7 years. If we detect it 10 to 7 years away from us, we could send up a probe. It could take a good look at it and go, okay, here's how big it is, how fast it's moving, here's how to aim it, and then fire up a bunch of speed bumps, basically, to bump into it, one after another, on a particular angle, because you don't have to stop it.
No.
You only have to slow it down or speed it up or knock it by a small fraction of an angle off course.
Yes.
And that's because in space, where not only can you not be heard screaming, but the Earth is a tiny pinprick.
Yes.
And it's traveling very fast in an orbit around the sun and moving through the galaxy, which means for an asteroid to hit us, it's a very small window of opportunity, which means if you just slow it down by just a few, let's just say a few meters per second, it might be just slow enough that the Earth passes out of the danger zone and it swings past us. Yes. And it only has to just swing past us. It doesn't have to, miss us by 100,000 kilometers. It's just like if it swung past 400 kilometers, it would take out a couple of satellites and stuff, but it would miss us. Yeah. So the European Space Agency and NASA have gotten together and said, well, that's a nice theory. Does it work? What are the parameters here? Because what's an asteroid really like out in space? What are they made out of? How will they react to being hit? Can we meaningfully change the trajectory of an asteroid? So they went and picked an asteroid, the Didymos. So there's the Didymoon and the Dimorphos. So it's a dual asteroid system. So it's got a big one there. The big one, Dimorphos, is... Let me see, how big is that one? So I'm looking on the dart.jhuapl.edu, which is a nice little website which is all about this mission, which is called the DART mission. It is... let me see. It doesn't tell me how big that one. Anyway, you've got one big asteroid and one small asteroid, and they're orbiting. So that's a nice candidate, because what we can do is if we modify the small one, we can measure its change in orbit, and that will tell us, based on the size and mass of that asteroid, how much force we need to hit by to move it by how much. Yeah, and that'll tell us how far out any given incoming asteroid we would have to hit by how much in order to change it by the amount we need.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was supposed to go up earlier in the year, like 2020. That got delayed for obvious reasons. And it's going up now. Let's see. They're sending up... It was going to be 2 separate satellites. One to observe and one to... what do you call it? One to actually do the impact. So it's... Yeah, but they've changed that. Now they're just sending up one which has multiple smaller satellites on it.
Yep.
So it's launching November 2021, or somewhere between November and February of 2022, and it should be somewhere between September and October of 2022 when it hits. So I'm looking forward to hearing about this, because this is a scenario depicted in sci-fi so often, with a real experimental process, which is great. So they've got just this one thing. They've got this one, it's about 1.3 meters by 1.2 meters sort of cube sort of thing. It's got a secondary camera which detaches a few days before impact and just starts filming and recording what's going on. Mm-hmm. And the main impactor itself then should be hitting this asteroid at 6.6 kilometers per second, which is, that's pretty fast. But it's 11 million kilometers away. So it's got an ion thruster, which is solar powered. And if we remember from way back a couple of years ago, we did the episode on passengers. We talked about the ion thrusters there. And ion thrusters are great because they shoot out. First of all, they're electronically done, so there's no burning. So, and we can get electricity from the solar panels. It shoots out little ions, which don't weigh much, but they travel really fast. Yeah, right. They have a thrust exhaust speed of like 11,000 kilometers a second or something. Okay. It's stupidly fast. Yeah. So the idea is that if you have that running for, I don't know, was it the best part of a year, just constantly accelerating over 11 million kilometers, eventually it just picks up speed because there's no wind resistance to slow you down here. And we're going to launch it with a great big Falcon X heavy lifter, the Falcon 9 by SpaceX, sorry. Yep. Great big rocket's going to shoot it out there. It's going to hit 6.6 kilometers per second, and they're going to measure it, and they've got like a predicted change in orbit, and they're going to see how that works.
Yeah, right.
And that's basically going to inform us how far out we need to detect. You know, for any given mass and speed of incoming asteroid, it will tell us how much force we have to hit it with and how far out we have to be warned beforehand.
Nice.
So
it's a cool mission.
Yeah, that's great. And you can see there's a picture even of how they're going to check this orbit change.
Yeah, right.
It's the DART. Oh, there we go. There's the size of the Didymos system. So Didymos is 780 meters across, which is nearly half a mile. And the smaller asteroid is 160 meters across. So it's not a big asteroid they're knocking, but they have chosen that because they want to be able to see an effect.
I suppose the question is, with that theory, if you move something off target which saves Earth, is it possible to then hit another target that it would never have hit to begin with? So, for example, in our solar system, could then the possibility be that it hits Mars and annihilates Mars or something?
Yeah, well, there's
it saves us, but then would
I
that have
that.
like negative consequences to the solar system? But then, what are the chances of that when you're dealing with such volumes of
Well,
space?
one of their targets would be to hit the moon. Yeah, because the moon is very close to us. And again, we may not be able to apply enough change in momentum to miss us entirely, but maybe we can shift it enough so it falls into the path of the moon instead of us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we still probably don't want the moon to be hit by something that's like 15 kilometers across.
No.
But it's going to take it a lot better than we are. Because the moon is still quite considerable in size.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
And then it becomes a weapon against our alien invaders, isn't it? We just knock asteroids off towards them.
That's right. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. But I do wonder then what's the negative consequence of that? Like if you knock the moon out.
Well, didn't we see that with the Wandering Earth?
Yeah. So
what happened? The moon got destroyed or something happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I
mean, our tides would be affected.
Yeah, it would take a while. Like with the moon gone, if it just one day evaporated, it would take quite a while for that to have a real effect on us. Because the moon's gravitational effect is not very strong.
No, but it does affect the tides and that. But it'd be interesting if that would have detrimental effects to us. You know what I mean? Would the planet just evolve a bit to it, you know? And
well, yeah, it would eventually cause problems. Well, one of the thoughts...
the gravitational pull at all?
Well, it's a very small effect to us, and this is the problem with a lot of these ideas of like gardening by the moon and so forth, where it draws the water up, and it's like, you know, the gravity of the moon, you're more affected by someone walking past you than you are by the moon. But if the moon vanished, it's there 24/7, 365 days a year, like orbiting. day after day after year. And it's the same thing as the ion drive. You know, over the course of a year, you can get something up to the speed of ridiculousness.
Yeah.
And likewise, so the moon disappears today. We probably wouldn't notice it for days, months, years, decades. Maybe in 50 years, 60 years' time, we'd find that the Earth's crust is starting to fail because the moon tidal effect actually also affects the what do you call it, the tectonic plates and earthquakes and so forth. It just keeps crunching it. And one of the thoughts about Venus, for example, it doesn't have a moon, and its rock shell renews every 30 million, 60 million years or something or other. It melts.
Yeah, right.
Because it doesn't have these crust plates shifting and releasing pressure, and it builds up, and then you get a melting effect.
Right.
So quite possibly, at some point we would start noticing not so much the tides, although that would have an effect, killing off plants and animals and things.
Yeah.
But we'd also then have volcanic problems, I think.
Interesting.
Probably wouldn't be our problem, it'd be our kids' problem. So, isn't that the way we do things?
It is.
Yeah,
Keep burning those fossil fuels.
That'll be my grandkids' problem. I'd be dead before that's a problem. Yeah. Anyway, but I do. I love this real life sort of investigation of science fiction concepts, or
Definitely.
is it the other way around? The concept was before the investigation, because we had the theory of the asteroid killing the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all know that it was actually smoking. If you've seen
We
the
all
Far
know it
Side.
was because they didn't have Bruce Willis to go up and like move and implant that nuclear bomb into the asteroid to save the dinosaurs.
And isn't it amazing that it's actually easier to train an oil rig driller to be an astronaut than it would be to train an astronaut to drill a hole?
Yes.
If you're an oil rig driller, let us know if you reckon you could do an astronaut's job or if an astronaut could do your job. Because,
That's a good point.
I mean, people make jokes about that, but quite seriously, I have a feeling it might be one of those ones where each side underestimates what the other side has to do. So,
Yeah.
So all the oil rig drillers who listen to us, get in touch.
The problem with that logically is not so much do you need it's not so much could a astronaut, you know, like maybe it would be a tough job for an astronaut to learn, but is it a tougher job for someone that's never been in space to learn how to be in a spacesuit?
And I think that's the main problem.
Like, that's the problem, right? Like, an astronaut is one thing because they're experts in their fields, but then they also take many, many years to become an astronaut.
And it'd be a similar problem, I think, to say, okay, let's get a football star to go play football on the moon.
Yeah.
Because it won't be hard to teach him to be an astronaut. Well, sure, okay, maybe you teach him enough to be an astronaut, but playing football on the moon will be totally different to doing it anywhere else. Oh, yeah. And I have a feeling that drilling is something that is just... Yeah. It's probably totally... I think the only way you could learn that would be to go practice on an asteroid. Yeah. Anything else would just not really work.
But hey, it's the movies. This is what we can do. We can have monsters, we can have asteroids, we can have mutant asteroids.
It makes for better drama, doesn't it, really?
It totally does. All right, well, I think that brings us to the end of Love and Monsters, episode 58 of Space Brains. We've talked a fair bit about the ins and outs of Love and Monsters, so let us know what you thought about the film. Did you like Joel and Joel's story? Did you like the fact that it fitted into the hero's journey? Did you like the idea that it was a bit tongue-in-cheek and not really a surprise? Did you watch it with your kids, or did you watch it on your own? I didn't watch it with my kids. I just watched it. But I did think afterwards that, especially like my oldest would really enjoy it.
Yeah, my son was fully into these monsters.
Yeah. It felt a bit inner child to me, a bit 80s in that the monsters were so, amplified. They don't quite often do that. You know, we see these great sci-fi, like something like Avatar, and they're invented, you know, monsters and stuff. But here we've got pretty much just our insects, but enlarged.
But cool.
It's awesome.
It's what every entomologist wants them to be like.
Let us know on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter.
If you spot me walking around Mandurah
Say hello.
and you recognise me somehow.
Email. Any of those options, hit us up and let us know what you thought about us talking about Love and Monsters. And give us a suggestion for another film. Next episode, we will be doing a total change, and we're going a little bit back in time to...
Is it a science fiction film?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
We're always doing science fiction. It is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh, I've never seen this one.
It's 2004, directed by Michael Gondry. Very interesting filmmaker. Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, and Ethan from Little Hobbit.
Ethan Spark.
No, what's his name?
Ethan McGarry.
I'm just thinking Ethan Hawke, but it's not Ethan Hawke. No, Elijah Wood. It's not Ethan at all.
I know, I'm thinking a Hobbit, Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood.
Sean
Elijah Wood. I don't know why I got stuck on that then. So Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, and Elijah Wood.
Carrey, which is the one with, what's his name? And Drew Carey. Not Drew Carey.
Drew Carey and Drew Carey. We're getting the names all mixed up tonight.
Poor Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore.
Please, neither Drew Carey nor Drew Barrymore take offence that I got your names mixed up, okay?
So just to re-clarify...
Oh, no, that's 100 First Dates or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which is where she has no short-term memory. But this is a different one.
This is totally different. This is not a comedy.
No.
And it's a very different styled film to what we've just looked at tonight.
Well, that one I was talking about was an Adam Sandler film, so it's not a comedy either.
No, this is not...
Sorry, Adam Sandler.
We love Adam Sandler.
Sorry, Adam.
So go check it out in advance if you want. This is a very interesting film. I've seen it a couple of times, and I look forward to watching it again, because every time I do, kind of does your head in. And we will talk about it next time.
Next time. See ya.
Spacebrains. Bye-bye.
Bye.